last night. If you don't know who I am, I'm Mrs. Sink, and I'm the K-2 math coach. Here we are in the science lab. I've got my science goggles and my science lab coat because we're going to do some science experiments. So, on the slide before this, it told you to get your Grow and Orb kit ready to go. If you don't have a Grow and Orb kit, that's okay. This is one of those science experiments that you're not going to be able to do from home necessarily if you don't have this kit. But don't hang up. Don't leave, because you're going to want to stay tuned for the next science experiment. So stay tuned, and besides, it's so fun to watch what happens. Who knows what's going to happen? Okay, let's open this kit up together. So we're going to open it up, and we're going to get all of our materials ready to go. Now that we have all of our supplies laid out and ready to go, including our directions, you also are going to need some water. I went and filled up a cup of water in my sink while I was getting my materials ready. So if you don't have water, you can go get a cup of water really quickly right now, and we'll come right back together. So you should have water, your pipette, an empty souffle cup, and a souffle cup that says Grow Orbs, and it has little orbs inside of it. Now, if you're joining us from home and you don't have this kit, let me show you what these little orbs look like. Look at that. They're these little, tiny, round, sphere-shaped things that we're gonna watch grow. All right, are you ready? So, if you're doing this from home, grab your pipette and make sure there's no orbs in your lid. I have 2 orbs stuck in my lid right here, so I'm just gonna tap very gently to get them out, and they're not coming out, so I'm gonna use my pipette to gently unstick them because they're stuck, and that way they can go into the cup. Okay, now we're ready. I'm going to pour a little bit of water into my souffle cup. That way I don't get too much water into my orb cup. Now, I have my souffle cup filled about halfway up. Then, I'm gonna use my pipette and I'm gonna put some water into my orb cup. So the way you do that is you squeeze it, you put it in the water, and then you let it go, and look at that. It filled up with water. And then I'm gonna squeeze it into my orb cup. Squeeze. Then I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna squeeze my pipette, stick it in the water, let it go to let it suck the water up into that pipette, and I'm gonna squeeze the water into my orb cup again. I'm gonna keep doing this until it's about halfway full. I'm not pouring into the orb container because otherwise I might get a little too much water. So I'm just gonna keep doing this until my orb container is about halfway full, okay? Join me while we do that. You do it at home, and if you're not doing it at home, you're gonna watch me as Alright, so your orb cup should be about halfway full of water. I'm a little less than halfway, but that's okay. Maybe I'll put a little bit more in there. So your orb cup should be about halfway full of water. And now all we're gonna do is we're gonna put the lid on top of this orb container. And we're gonna let it sit overnight and see what happens. However, for those of you watching from home right now, you're gonna get to see what happens here because it's going to do a super time warp speed video. So you're gonna get to see what happens to these little orbs overnight. It's been about 1 hour since we put the water in the souffle cup to watch these orbs grow, and already they're growing. So right now they kind of just look like ghosts. Let's take a look. It's really hard to see them, and if we look at them through the top, you can kind of see them floating around in there. transparent. Transparent means that they're kind of see-through. I'm so excited to see what happens to these orbs as time goes on. I'm so impatient, so I'm so interested to see what happens, but I don't know if I can wait. We've got to wait even more time to see what happens. I'll check back in with you in about 4 hours. It's been about 5 hours since we dropped the water with the pipette into the souffle cup. And you'll notice in this picture right here that the orbs are growing. Now, I'm not gonna lie, as a scientist, when you take a guess as to what you think is gonna happen, that's called a hypothesis. And my hypothesis was that these were gonna grow into being like jelly balls, almost water beads that you could like touch and they weren't gonna be so translucent or see-through. But these orbs are actually quite see-through. So it's interesting as a scientist when something doesn't go the way you think it does. Like this experiment. If you take a look at this picture, you'll notice the spheres are much larger than when we started, but they're very see-through. I'm gonna try to show you in a live video what this looks like as well. So you'll notice the green ones appear to be much larger than the blue ones. Look at that. Look at how cool those are. I'm excited to see what happens after about a full night. So I'm excited to see what happens to these after they sit overnight. So we're gonna be patiently waiting all night long to see what happens to these orbs overnight and to see if they grow anymore or if they've pretty much stabled out. Stay tuned. It's been about 18 hours since we dropped the water into our souffle cup that had those little tiny orbs in it, and now we get to see what happened to those orbs overnight. If you remember, they were teeny tiny little beads, and then as time was going on, 1 hour, 5 hours, they were getting bigger and bigger. And now that we left them overnight, they really have absorbed quite a bit of water. In fact, if we look at these green ones, they are huge. They really absorbed quite a bit of water, a lot more than the blue ones and the yellow ones. In fact, let me get a yellow one on my spoon so that you can see the size difference. Can you see that size difference? They're much bigger. The green ones are much bigger than those yellow ones. They're really, really cool. So what changes did you notice happened to those orbs? What were the changes that we noticed? Yes, there was a physical change. The physical change was that the orb literally went from a small to a much larger size. So the size changed. What else changed with these orbs? Yes, there was a chemical change as well. So we noticed that we had a physical change and we had a chemical change. The chemical change is that these are super absorbent polymers. That's what those orbs were. They started as a super absorbent polymer, and then when we added the water to the souffle cup, there was a chemical change between the water and the polymer that made it absorb a lot of water, which allowed it to have that physical change. That is so cool, isn't it? Yes, it is. I think so too. Excellent. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for Grow an Orb. Stay tuned for Mrs. Thomas's experiment that's coming right up. You're not going to want to miss it. And I'll see you a little bit later for an at-home experiment that everybody can do. See you later.